Andrew Urquhart with you on the program today. Honestly, slightly out of breath. At the last minute, I decided that I was going to run back to my desk in the office from the Rhema studio to get a prop for my conversation. Look, honestly, I know it's radio. I know the folks at home can't see me, but we are filming this conversation. Conversation very much looking forward to with Elizabeth Kirkby-McLeod. Libby, kia ora, good morning.
Hello, I know it's radio too, and I brought a prop today as well, so it must be the topic.
Exactly. Now, as our literary correspondent, we've talked about different styles of books, different genres, different ways of publishing. Today, though, talking about book design, and there's a particular reason for this. Some awards coming up, I understand.
Yeah, so the awards have just been, the Publishers Association of New Zealand run a book design awards every year. And there's various awards given out, and they're purely based on book design. And some categories suit this better than others, as you can imagine. Yeah. Cookbooks, often beautifully designed. Certain non-fiction books are beautifully designed. But it got my interest because one of the books, the one that won the best commercial book for adults, I actually bought kind of just because of its design. I just sort of, every time I went to a bookshop, I'd see this beautiful book and I'd flick through it and I'd think, and then eventually I just bought it. And so beautiful design is important. It does help to draw you to a book. Yeah. And so there'll be talk about, do we judge a book by its cover?
Because we're told we shouldn't. Actually, and well, I suppose you shouldn't only judge the book by the cover would be a more accurate metaphor. But the cover of the book is by definition part of the book, right? This is part of the creative process. Now, sometimes, and you'll know as a published author, sometimes the book design isn't always up to the author. Sometimes that's the publishing house and other people get involved with that, but it is a part of the creative process.
It is, and I think it's part of the contract between the author and the reader. And I think sometimes today, particularly with the rise of ebooks and AI-generated books, the design, the beauty of the physical product of a book is often not given as much thought, perhaps by the creators, as I think it should be, because as part of that contract you have with the reader, you are asking them to spend some money on something, and it should be easy to read. It should be beautiful on the eye. It should be, it should be something that they can see that you've poured your love and thought into in all aspects of it.
Yeah. And I think this is where, because you and I have talked beforehand about digital versus physical books, this is where I think physical books have the edge. Because a book that you can hold and that you can feel the embossing, that you can feel the texture of the book, having that in your hand, that's a lot different than a little thumbnail that you click on before you listen to it on your Kindle or whatever that is. Even if it's the same design, it's a different process. It engages with it emotionally in a different way.
Absolutely. And, ebooks certainly have their place in terms of accessibility. If you pick up a book and you have to kind of hold it away to figure out if you can read the type of the text, you don't have to do that with an ebook. You can just click the eyes button a couple of times and away you go. But reading is it can be an all sensory experience, right? It can be the smell of the book, the feel of the book, look of the book, as well as the actual reading. And if you read it out loud, there you go. You've got holding it, you've got almost all your senses engaged. And they do say that when you read a physical book, it sticks with your memory longer. And perhaps that's why, perhaps because all of your senses are working and engaged in it. One thing I found really interesting is that the Bible, and again, we move to, in church, people say, pull out your Bible, lots of people just pull out their phone. Yeah. But the Bible in a book which people have spent a lot of money beautifully designing. I found an article by Peter Gurry in the Gospel Coalition website where he was talking about different beautifully designed Bibles. There was one in the 6th century. It was the Gospels. They dyed the parchment purple and they wrote the ink in silver. Wow. Now in the 6th century, I'm imagining both purple dye and silver ink were pretty expensive. Yeah. So it would be an expensive, beautiful, one-of-a-kind book. And I imagine that they did that and they spent the effort doing that because the value and the beauty of the product matched the value and the beauty of what was inside it.
Mm. And that is an important part of it. And perhaps it's even more important now because I think there's been a bit of a resurgence. For a while it was just, your paperbacks, stack them high, sell them cheap. But now if you buy a book and it is something of beauty, that it's something that you can put on display, as you said, like non-fiction books, the coffee table books, or something which is beautiful to hold in your hand, it's almost like a bit of a status symbol to say, oh, look at the beautiful books that you own, right?
Well, and they certainly, you pay for that privilege.
Exactly.
I'm saying that you have to only buy really beautiful, expensive books written in silver ink. But I am saying, particularly as a creator, that if there are creators listening, writers out there, think about that. Think about that experience for your reader. And if you're a reader, think about what draws you to a book. You may be, whatever great thing is inside of it, you often won't get to that content if you can't get past, the cover. And also, if you think about a bookstore where you go in, millions, probably not, but I'd say thousands of books in your average bookstore, right?
Yep.
And so it's going to draw you to that book. And unless you know already the content that's within it, then it's probably going to be the design.
Mm. Now, cost is a part of this, and as you say, not everybody can afford the fancy books. And even as a publisher, that if you're wanting an embossed cover, that's going to cost you more. If it's going to be hardcover, then that's a premium price indeed. I suppose we don't want the book design. We want it to attract people. We don't want it to be a barrier to people accessing the book because of the additional cost, right?
Absolutely. And within New Zealand, there's some forms of printing we can't do. So if you want a hardcover book, or a book like a hardcover with the dust jackets, you probably won't be able to print that in New Zealand.
Yep.
And so if buying a New Zealand made product is really important to you, then maybe you buy the soft jacket version.
Yeah.
So again, I'm not saying that design is the only thing that matters, but I think that it does matter. And I think that beauty to me is something of the divine, right?
Yeah.
It's not something that we need to what is it, the aesthetics, the people that the Christians that like all kind of worldly beauty. I don't necessarily think that that's the way that we ought to go.
Yeah. Now, something else I wanted to talk to you about, because one of the other I suppose considerations when it comes to book design is environmental issues. You mentioned some books can only be published overseas, so you've got the carbon footprint, I suppose, with that. For other books, you can say, hey, this book was made with recycled paper, or there's a particular binding technique which is more environmentally friendly. Is that a part of the market now as well?
Absolutely. And in fact, you often see, I've got this book here. Let's see if there's got it. But often within the cover, here we go, you'll find, for those watching on video, you'll find a little logo inside the book that says whether the paper is sourced by responsible sources. And I would always look for that if you're buying a book. Wood products are sustainable if they're sustainably sourced.
Yeah.
So I think people think, I'll ditch my plastic and I'll go for wood. But if that wood is being made by cutting down the rainforests of endangered creatures, then you're probably not making a better decision for the planet. So those little things of looking for the logo that says it's environmentally sourced. Sometimes it might talk even about the ink. And, if you get really literary, I often notice in the back of very literary novels that I read, it'll even have a whole page about the font, the history of the font, who designed it, when it was first used, why they chose it. Really get into the weeds and this stuff if you like.
Exactly. And hey, I don't know, talking about engaging with your senses, the environmentally friendly books, especially environmentally friendly inks, they have a distinct smell to them, which is, I find, quite intoxicating. I love a good environmentally friendly book. Regardless of what's in it, it just smells delicious.
Old books as well. People often find, and of course, you can't be probably much more environmentally friendly than buying a secondhand book.
Yeah, exactly.
Have quite their own smell, don't they? And are often, beautifully, like your cloth covered.
Yep.
Books used to offer hardcover cloth. You don't see those nearly as much as you used to. So sometimes if you're collecting old books, you might want to look for cloth covered.
Yeah, a book design renaissance, not just all those, just a bookshelf of leather-bound encyclopedias or anything. Now, I've showed myself up here with my clever question about the environment, because the book that I have to show off today, I was quickly scrambling to see if there was an environment. No, there's no environmental mark on this one, but it is the latest in the trilogy from Monty Suter, the Kauai series, which is a series of, a trilogy of novels in New Zealand history, Tree of Nourishment. This is my homework for the weekend, Libby, because I'm interviewing Dr. Suter on Monday's program. This is a beautiful design. It's a little bit embossed. It's got a beautiful cover. It feels good in the hand. It's got a certain weight to it. But the content of it, regardless of the design, if the content of it's not worth the paper it's printed on, at the end of the day, that's what we should measure, right?
We should. And look, I know that you loved the first book in that series. I remember talking to you about it. And have you noticed how the first and second book have a look about them to draw them together?
Yeah.
So that's part of the series. And I think that's really important too, when we're designing books, that we think about how it relates to perhaps the other books in our series, but also to other books of its type. So again, it's part of that contract with the reader, that the reader knows what they're picking up. I read a really good book recently, and it was good, but I thought it was a cookbook. It wasn't and it was all right. It was really good. I enjoyed it, but I was like, this contract with me as a reader was not met, because I just don't know what all the things signaled I was picking up a cookbook. Obviously, I didn't click through it enough before I got it,
and hence the danger again of judging a book by its cover, Libby. Now, this book that I'll be reading over the weekend certainly got an engaging front cover, and I know for publishers, for PR people, that is what you need to engage with a potential reader, either in the bookshop or on the library shelves, and hey, an important part of the process. Libby, this has been a fascinating conversation. Thank you so much for being the literary correspondent to the show. Thanks for joining us. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, Andrew. You too. Happy reading.